You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
All right, everyone. I am starting us off this week. And
what do you have for us, Rachel?
Suggested to me, this was suggested to me by several friends of mine because they know I do this podcast and like, this is weird. And it's been circulating a lot more on social media recently. So I'm going to do a little bit of background and then go into some specifics. This week I'm talking about white-naped cranes. Now, do either of you, Kirk,
all right.
you know about white-naped cranes at all?
They are a crane with a white nape.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
I really don't. I don't know anything about them.
You're not wrong. You're actually very correct. Good job.
Yes. Bonus points.
So this is a threatened bird species in the crane family.
Right.
They are about 44 to 49 inches long, like their body from their chest to like their tail.
Not including the head and the neck.
Not including the head and the neck.
Okay.
No.
Wow. Okay, that's so big.
But they are about 4.3 feet tall, like with their neck standing straight up. So yeah, they're a large bird.
Not as large as Rachel though.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a 0.8 of a 0.8 of a Rachel, maybe 0.8.
Yeah, that's about right.
that.
Somewhere in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I think we're all on board.
Cool. They weigh about 12 pounds. They have pinkish legs, a gray and white. Like their body is mostly gray, and then it goes up into their neck, and they have like several white stripes on the back of their neck. So they have a gray and white striped neck.
Do you mean on the nape of their neck?
Yes, on the nape of their neck.
Okay, good. Just clarifying.
They also have a red patch red over their eyes, so red on their face.
Okay.
They breed in northeastern Mongolia and China. They're found in various parts all over eastern Asia. And fun fact, they are the only cranes found in South Korea.
Okay.
They actually can be found in
I feel like there is a lot more to this story coming.
Oh, there is.
Okay.
So like most cranes, they have a courtship dance with each other, and they have a unison call that sounds kind of like if you take a rubber chicken and have it squawk. Okay?
Yeah, I gotcha.
And they mate for life, generally speaking. And females are the ones to initiate the display. Now, males and females look the same. But this is where we get to our story. Okay?
Okay.
So at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute in 2004, there is a keeper that was brought in that has just started a job, right? And his name was Chris Crow.
I saw this.
You know what this is, yeah. And he truly found new meaning to the words on the application, duties as assigned.
I see.
Other duties as assigned?
Uh-huh.
Right.
Kirk, have you heard this story at all?
Let's pause for a moment, though. I just have to point out the amazing nominative determinism of a guy
named Chris
whose
Crow.
last name is Crow. Yeah, awesome. I have not heard about this story.
His last name could have been Crane.
That would have been better.
That would have been better. Yeah.
So he's in charge of like a number of birds, like 17 cranes, not crows.
There it is.
And some other species at the Institute. But in 2004, a new bird was brought into the Institute. She was a genetically valuable white-naped crane. and she was 23 years old, and she had not once produced a single chick. And so Chris Crow was put in charge of this bird. She had been known as kind of a difficult bird at being a crane, and she had somewhat of a reputation coming into this. She was born in 1982 in July, and well, her name is Walnut. And the rumor going around when she comes into the Institute is that she had 2 potential male suitors at different times at other zoos, and they were found that tried to engage her in dance, in courtship, and were found dead. Now this is...
Ooh. Oh my.
This has not been proven. It's just a rumor, and no zoos, because they are a vulnerable species, want to fess up or own up to having lost any birds.
Well, hold on. There'd be records of the fact that the bird, died, though.
Yeah.
You don't think people just don't want to admit how it died?
Yeah.
That's better than, someone dropped a ladder on it or something.
Right, but as far as
I don't know why that's what just came to my brain. That's horrible.
This is just something that is attached to Walnut, and no one's been able to prove or disprove either way.
It's the hot rumor mill in the zoo circuit.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on.
I got it. So she was born in July of 1982 to some very genetically valuable parents who were actually wild caught, because it's the 80s, so unfortunately they were just caught. It was just part of the practice in China, but they didn't want to potentially let these birds back into the wild because they might have parasites, and they didn't know exactly where they were caught, and there was international tensions and such.
Sure.
So they kept them, and it allowed for a lot of genetic diversity to happen. They produced lots and lots of eggs, including Walnut. Unfortunately, they were, instead of being raised by the crane parents, these chicks were then raised by volunteers known as chick mamas. And unfortunately, Walnut imprinted on humans, and poses a problem for her future because she doesn't actually know that she is a crane.
Yeah, saw that coming.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we zoom forward to 2004, and Chris, with another keeper on staff, because she's genetically viable, they want to artificially inseminate her and have a viable egg and everything like that, because it's very important to be able to continue the species, especially since a big problem in the zoo community is having too much interbreeding. It's very important to have a genetic diversity. And if this is very stressful when it comes to the bird as well as the crane, as well as the keepers, because they don't want to they don't want to get hurt, first of all, and they don't want to hurt the crane. But they went through, and she did produce an egg that particular year, and which was then given to another mated pair of white-naped cranes. However, later in this summer, after this had gone on, Chris Crow, the keeper of Walnut, noticed that Walnut was doing some of the first moves of a mating dance to him.
To him, right?
To him. And he didn't recognize it at first. He thought that she was just super excited to see him, and it's just like, oh.
Well, to be fair, she was.
Yes, she was. But once he recognized it, he started reciprocating to Walnut, bobbing his head and raising his arms and dancing in circles, throwing grass, and just doing those things. Apparently, according to this article I read at the Washington Post, honestly, it was almost too in-depth, this article, how it went. But she would apparently be unsatisfied when he tried to mimic that unison call, do the male part of the song, because he's a human.
Crane calls are wild.
Yes, they are, and there's no way that he would be able to do that. But he realized that this was an opportunity to allow Walnut to consent to the artificial insemination, which would reduce stress not only on the keepers, but on Walnut herself. So they came up with some sort of plan where Chris would dance with Walnut, and she has accepted him as her mate. And he has been a mate to Walnut, and to the point where, like, it's like they will build a nest together. They give her fake eggs to
sit on.
And she expects him to sit on them too, although he doesn't. If he just stands near there, apparently that's good enough for Walnut. But this has allowed her to contribute to her species numbers, and all of her eggs that have been that she's had have been given to mated pairs of cranes. And she's actually gone from being the most genetically viable to she's been a mother and now is a grandmother crane. She's in her 40s now, and Chris is in his 30s. So talk about having the weirdest, but most the strongest job security in the zoo world.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
That man can't ever leave.
How many years can he expect to stay married to Walnut?
So she's in her 40s, and from what I could see no. She was 23. Yeah, so she's in her 40s. They easily get to be in their 60s. So he's got a while.
I heard they're going to pretty soon be moving her over to the cougar enclosure.
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah.
I will also say that
that's horrible.
Chris, because of his foresight, I guess, into engaging Walnut with this sort of behavior, has actually allowed other cranes that were known to be difficult and had an unmated pair. He's been able to replicate this process with other cranes. So, I mean, he's a bit of a player in the crane world, it seems.
Does he also have a human on the side?
I mean, what a conversation that is to have. I don't know. I didn't look into that. But those two cranes, has moved on. But, oh my gosh. Yeah. So, that's my story this week, is Walnut, the white-naped crane, and this man, Chris, who has the strongest job security in the zoo world because of a crane that has decided that he is her mate.
Thank you for that, Rachel.
Anytime. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, it will be Victoria's turn.
So if you've been listening for a little bit, you know that our Patreon program is going over on patreon.com. People have started to sign up and join the Society of Strange. And you might be thinking, hey, what's in it for me? Well, at some of our higher levels, you can actually get bonus content. And I wanted to give you a little taste of that.
No.
Because I did promise back in episode 25 that I was going to take Rachel's laugh and turn it into a ringtone, and it's now available. Here it is.
And there it goes again.
It keeps on going. So anyways,
Rachel is losing
it's hard to tell which is the recording and which is actually Rachel live. So look, if you would like to have that as the ringtone on your phone, and let's be honest, who wouldn't? You can head over to patreon.com/strangebynature and join the Society of Strange. We've got things like that and other fun stuff, outtakes from the episodes we're putting up, and with some other special content that's going to be coming in down the road here. So head on over to patreon.com/strangebynature, and thank you to those people who've already become patrons. And let's get back to the show.
Thanks.
So, Kirk, Rachel, have either of you ever been to Yellowstone National Park?
No.
I was in Yellowstone. Yes, I was there this summer.
Right, you were.
And Rachel was dog sitting for me. So thank you, Rachel. I couldn't have done it without you.
Anytime.
I have never
They're
been.
Lovely dogs.
Oh, I've never been. I would, of course, love to go someday. It is world famous.
It's on the bucket list.
It is on the bucket list.
It's pretty cool.
It has its geysers, its wildlife. It's been a place of trade, gathering, hunting, ceremonies for many native peoples for thousands of years. And it was actually the first national park in the U.S., arguably also the world. So it's been recognized for a really long time as a special place. And all of those geysers, of course, have to be fed by some significant geothermal activity.
Yes.
Are we talking about the supervolcano?
We are. We're talking about the supervolcano. So
I'm excited.
Some of you may have heard of this before. There you go. Yellowstone is located over a hot spot, which is basically a place in the crust of the earth where there's an extra hot plume that brings magma up from deep, almost near the core, up closer to the surface, than is normal. So Iceland and Hawaii are also famous hotspots. So in most cases, the hotspot actually stays in the same place, but as the continental plate moves over the hotspot, the location of the volcanic activity appears to move across the landscape. So if you think about
right, like that's
exactly,
Hawaii,
so like the Hawaiian island chain stretches along to the northwest, and the Big Island is the volcanically active one, is the biggest, and they get smaller and older and more eroded as you go northwest.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Because the plate is moving southeast.
Right.
So the same thing happens with Yellowstone. There's actually a series of volcanic deposits that stretch southwestward for many hundreds of miles across the Snake River Plain, largely in Idaho and Oregon.
Okay.
And yes, so Yellowstone is actually not only a hotspot, but it is, depending on your definition, a supervolcano. Now, you may have heard that it is overdue for an eruption and could erupt at any time and cover most of the country in a thick layer of ash.
That has been going around, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not untrue.
Right. So this is what I'm going to talk about. This is technically possible, but it turns out it is not at all probable. So
okay.
Just a little geology first. Yellowstone is underlain. Underneath it is a magma reservoir. It's about 5 miles deep, and it's fed by that hot spot. And the crust in that area rises and falls as the magma moves up and then cools. So geologists are constantly monitoring how much the crust is swelling and sinking there. And, every so often, every decade or so, it'll start swelling up, and then everybody will be like, oh, the supervolcano is going to erupt.
It's going to blow!
And then it sinks back down.
Yeah. Right.
But, it is true that Yellowstone has erupted massively in the past. There have been 3 super eruptions. The oldest one was 2.1 million years ago. The middle one was 1.3 million years ago. And the most recent one was 640,000 years ago. And so a super eruption is considered an 8 or more. It is catastrophic, absolutely. There's a volcanic explosivity index, which you can think of it sort of like the Richter scale. It's a logarithmic scale. So 8 or more is considered a super eruption. And that is equal to 1,000 or more kilometers cubed of material ejected. Cubed. 1,000 cubic kilometers or more. That is a lot of ash.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. Do you, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but have you, when you were looking into this, is there any past evidence of how far away from Yellowstone material from Yellowstone has been found geologically?
Yes, I did not write that down. But if I remember remembering correctly, it's like as far east as kind of the upper Midwest and as far south as like the sort of northern New Mexico, Arizona, that kind of a range. Now, of course,
Big range.
If you're talking dust, then you're like way past
Yeah.
that probably. But like
in terms of measurable ash deposits.
right.
Yeah.
All right.
And
It's fine.
when a volcano explodes, it leaves behind a hole in the ground, which geologists call a caldera. And these explosions left calderas that are very large. So the current caldera is bigger than the entirety of Yellowstone Park. And so it's 30 by 45 miles.
It's so ridiculous.
That's from the most recent
What?
one. The one from 2.1 million years ago was almost twice as big.
I'm sorry. I'm not a miles.
Miles.
Yeah. When I was there, they're like, oh, you are now in the caldera, and you're looking around like,
What?
Yeah.
what? No, I'm not. And you're like, well, yeah, the other edge is like 30 miles away. You're like, I can't see that. I can't see that far. Like it doesn't. It's on a scale that makes absolutely no sense to humans.
It's so
whatsoever.
true, Kirk. Because you think about, like, I think when most people think about a caldera, they think of a volcano like Kilauea, or they think about like Crater Lake
Cone
or something like
volcanoes,
that.
Yeah.
And those are on a comprehensible scale, but Yellowstone really is not.
Right.
Sure. No. I didn't know it was that big.
So we have these past super eruptions, but honestly, there's really no sense in which Yellowstone is quote unquote overdue for an eruption. Geologists are not sure that another super eruption will ever happen there. Most volcanoes that have a super eruption don't have them multiple times. And the ones that do are not on any kind of a regular schedule.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So while Yellowstone did have these 3 super eruptions, it has had many more eruptions that are much, much smaller, similar like to the kind of thing that happens, say, in Iceland frequently. And the most recent one that happened was kind of that scale, and that was 70,000 years ago. And it was not like hugely explosive.
Just yesterday.
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
But good news, any kind of eruption would be preceded by intense, frequent earthquakes, which would break up the surface of the rocks and eventually clear the way for magma to come to the surface. So we would have plenty of advanced warning. There have been no sign of those. Yellowstone continues to behave as it has for the last 140 years that scientists have been watching. So it's quite possible that Yellowstone may never erupt again. And frankly, a super eruption is infinitesimally unlikely. There will be another super eruption somewhere in the world again, which is bad news for us.
Oh my.
But
Kirk's and my faces just like we just got real big eyes like, I'm sorry, what?
I mean, I don't have this on my list, but maybe I should put it on there. There's been some eruptions that are not, I don't know what you classify them, not even super eruptions, but some very large eruptions that those are unbelievable enough. But a super eruption would just be
There's
horrifying.
a helpful graphic. It's on the Wikipedia page, I think, for supervolcanoes that has overlapping circles of various diameters representing the ash volume for different eruptions for the 3 Yellowstone eruptions, and then like Mount St. Helens, and I think maybe Mount Pinatubo's in there. You know, a bunch of the kind of more well-known
like
ones.
Krakatoa, probably. Yeah.
And so you can get a visual representation of just how big a super eruption is compared to some of these others. It's massively, massively bigger. But, you know, there have only
I
been...
want a comparison.
Sorry, what, Rachel?
I don't know if I want to have that comparison in my brain or not.
Right.
Too late.
So
It's
there
already there.
There have only been about 60 known super eruptions, which have been spread over millions of years. So, frankly, the odds of one happening in our lifetime are, again, extremely low. But you never know.
Oh, what a cheerful.
Way to end on that. Yay. Maybe it might happen. Who knows? Cool.
And that's what I have for you this week. When we come back, you're welcome. When we come back from the break, Kirk will have something delightful for us.
Well, back when I started my career as a naturalist, I learned a lot of facts on the job, right?
As you do.
And I certainly also, learned a lot in college courses as well before I became a naturalist. But I have to admit, there is a fact that I want to talk about. I'm not sure if I first heard about it in school or on the job, but it was definitely something that I was taught at some point. In fact, it was something I heard repeated frequently, so I likely heard it in more than one place. And this fact was that most birds can't smell, or at least they don't really have much of any sort of sense of smell. And vultures are often touted as the exception in the bird world, that vultures are exceptional because unlike the other birds, they actually have an amazing sense of smell and use it to find their prey. And so I was curious if I could find a good scientific source on how far away vultures can smell food. But what I mostly came up with in my searches were hundreds of websites touting that vultures can smell carrion at least a mile away. And would you believe it, none of them bother to cite any sources.
Really?
When they
the
say
internet didn't cite their
so it's
sources?
almost like all the websites are just copying each other. So I finally did find a somewhat better article from the Smithsonian Insider magazine claiming that turkey vultures can smell rotting flesh in concentrations as low as a few parts per billion in the air.
Whoa.
Which is really fascinating. And they didn't have a classical citation, but they were interviewing an ornithologist who studies vultures. So I thought that was pretty good
Fairly legit,
information.
yeah.
Yeah. Figured he'd probably be the one who would know.
Probably.
Now, I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole looking for an original citation on the 1 mile claim. But what was really interesting is that almost all the websites I looked at made another claim side by side with the claim about the turkey vulture. Again, almost like they were all copying each other. They nearly all claimed that the sense of smell was unique to vultures, and that most birds have a terrible sense of smell. And you see this said again and again and again. So I was taught that same fact that vultures can smell, but other birds can't. And I think I've probably, when I was a younger naturalist, even probably taught that to some groups I was working with.
Right.
And one common bit of evidence used to support this is great horned owls. And that's, everyone else talks about, if you don't believe me, just look at the great horned owl. They eat skunks. And everyone's like, oh, gross, who could possibly eat a skunk? And that's somehow put up as proof that birds don't have a sense of smell, that owls eat skunks.
But owls are stealth predators.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but so the idea is that and
you get
and they
sprayed,
do eat skunks,
they wouldn't get
right?
bothered by the smell, but I mean.
But see, that's a human assumption,
Yeah.
right? Because we're like, that skunks smell terrible, so therefore nothing would ever eat that, right? But look at my dogs, right?
Yeah.
My dogs love to eat scat from other animals. If they find a dead animal carcass, the
They'll roll
worse
in
it
it.
smells, the more they're like, oh, I just gotta roll around in that. It smells so good. So
Your one dog
we
likes
really
to
can't.
eat American toads.
Yeah, my one dog does like to nibble on American toads. So, and they taste terrible. So, this idea that they would care about a smell that we care, of course, is not necessarily true. And also, great horned owls are incredibly talented hunters, and they can actually kill a skunk before it even sprays.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe
what I
Victoria,
meant,
what you
yeah.
were kind of getting at, right? Yeah. So, and also when they pick it apart, it's like, well, don't eat that part that's going to have the I forget the name of the actual chemical.
Yeah, I actually
odor
just
is
saw
the
something. There's some Instagram that's basically people posting pictures of dead animals that they find, which
Right.
I came across the other day, referred to in some article that I was reading. And one of the pictures posted was somebody found just the scent glands of a
scent glands?
skunk that had been
Yeah.
left behind by
you
whatever
go.
predator ate it.
Which
Fair.
right there would suggest that maybe the birds can smell, and that's why they're not eating that.
Yeah, or
right? So
that might have been a coyote. We don't know. It was a bird on that case, but sure. Yeah.
Sure. There's this idea out there that most birds can't smell, but there really hasn't been much research on bird smell. We've just made a lot of assumptions, and this is probably one of like the reoccurring themes on this show, that assumptions are bad in science. Right?
Yeah, they are very
So-
much. Yes.
Where all this is leading takes us back a few episodes where I was talking about how researchers figured out how birds use stars to migrate. Remember?
Yeah.
I did promise at the end of that I would share more interesting research on migration, and that time has arrived.
We're not
What?
talking about bird smell? We are talking about bird smell.
We are talking about bird smell.
What?
So researchers, I know. Researchers were once mocked for even wanting to study birds' ability to smell. It was so strongly believed, even by like ornithologists, that birds cannot smell. And a few scientists, though, have shown that many species have absolutely incredible abilities to smell, and not just vultures. In fact, some people are thinking that most birds have the ability to smell. There's been a number of researchers working on this, but where I first heard about it was an amazing bird smell story back in 2010, when scientists with the Max Planck Institute published an amazing study. So here's what researchers did. They captured 24 adult and 24 juvenile catbirds, and they divided them into an experiment, both like experiment and like a variable group and a control group, right? In this experimental group, a number of them had saline sprayed in their noses, which would temporarily knock out their sense of smell. They'd get it back later, but they couldn't smell anything. And then the control group, of course, had nothing done to change their sense of smell. Now the researchers, this was in New Jersey where they were doing this, and the researchers also caught adult catbirds in Illinois, and had them basically overnighted to New Jersey to join up with the other catbirds they had. And again, they did the same thing where they're divided into a group that can smell and a group that could not smell. So all of the birds were then fitted with radio transmitters so they could be tracked after being released to see what happened. And I should point out also, this was right during the middle of fall migration. So they weren't just going to release these birds and have them sit around in a bush. They were like, we got to get out of here. We have to migrate, right?
Okay.
So what happened was really interesting. Now, you would think if birds could not smell, nothing would happen, because it wouldn't matter if you knocked out their non-existent sense of smell.
Right.
I do need you, though, to picture the state of New Jersey. It is basically a giant peninsula right on the ocean there, right? To the east, you have the Atlantic Ocean, and to the west, you have the Delaware River, which slowly gets wider and wider and wider and becomes Delaware Bay, which separates New Jersey from the rest of the land there to the west. Now, experienced adult catbirds in New Jersey have learned that their best route during migration is not to head due south during migration. Because if you head south down the Jersey shore, you end up at Cape May. And once you get to Cape May, you either have to cross the bay at a very wide spot or backtrack north up the bay looking for a narrower place to cross. And adult birds actually, head southwest during migration in New Jersey. Most of the catbirds they were looking at, they all went southwest over toward the bay, basically directly to the narrowest spot they could cross, so they would not have to cross Delaware Bay.
Okay.
Now, adult birds that were in the control group in the experiment did exactly that. When they released them, they headed southwest as expected. But the ones that could not smell did not head southwest, they headed due south. Almost like they were having to rely on just some other migration cues to know to go south, but they didn't go southwest like they should have. They essentially acted like juvenile birds that had not yet learned the best migration route. So it seems pretty clear that smell does play a role in what route the birds are taking. And now birds from Illinois had an interesting reaction as well. The birds that could not smell also just headed straight south. The birds that could smell either headed due west or they went southwest. Now, it's not really clear what they were smelling, because it definitely wasn't like their experience telling them, oh, head toward the
Right.
bay, because they're from Illinois. They
Right,
wouldn't
they
know
wouldn't
that.
know.
But something about them having a sense of smell maybe told them that due south was not a good direction to go, or somehow it played into it somehow. And so we do know that that sense of smell made them go a different way, which is really, really fascinating. So this study and many, many more like it show that many birds actually have amazing senses of smell. And what I think is super cool, because there are lots of experiments out there to show that birds have sense of smells. There's more and more of them out there. But what I think is the super amazing part about this is not only do they have that sense of smell, they are using that sense of smell to migrate. It is one of the senses they use for migration, which is just something that people could not even imagine that would be something that would play in. But when animals have a sense of smell, they're going to use whatever senses they have to aid them in getting to where they need to go. So it is really amazing that we're finding out this new stuff about birds. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what that research was and how researchers decided to test out if birds do use their sense of smell during migration, because I thought it was a really kind of clever bit of research that those researchers came up with.
Yeah.
Super cool. I did not know that. Thank you,
I
Kirk.
didn't either. That's amazing. Thank you, Kirk.
You are welcome. Yeah, smell and birds is a really strange thing. I may have a little bit more to say about it in a future episode.
I would be shocked.
I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, well, thanks for stopping by this week, and we'll see everybody next
Talk to
week.
you next
Thanks,
week.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.